Third mega problem is climate change. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I know I'm in California and people are very up on this. I noticed the weather the other day in Los Angeles was 113 degrees. Let me just make 2 points here, about this issue. I'm not going to go through the whole climate argument. But this is how I kind of talk about it when I deal with the climate deniers and skeptics. So, first of all, I never use the term global warming. Global warming. Sounds so cuddly. Global warming. Really, just to a kid from Minnesota, that actually sounds like golf in February. Okay. I much prefer the term global weirding, a term coined by Hunter Lovins from the Rocky Mountain Institute, because really what happens with climate change is the weather gets weird. Okay, the hots get hotter. You do get a 113-degree day in October in Los Angeles. The wets get wetter. You have suddenly tornadoes in New York City. I grew up in the Midwest in Minnesota. I know about tornadoes, but I never knew about tornadoes in Manhattan. Okay. So let's understand, this is really about global weirding. The weather gets weird. But the second thing I try to do, I try to avoid these kind of arguments, with climate deniers whenever I can. But whenever I get into one, I just really explain to them that when it comes to climate change, I'm a Dick Cheney guy. Me and Dick, we're like that, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you recall that when the Iraq War was being debated, Dick Cheney said, that if there was a 1% chance that Saddam Hussein had a nuclear capability, we had to take that out because if he had a nuclear weapon, it would be potentially irreversible and catastrophic. Oh, I totally agree. And I feel the exact same way about climate change. If there is a 1% chance, okay, that climate change is here, it will be irreversible, friends, and catastrophic. And just like Dick, whenever I see something that is irreversible and potentially catastrophic, even 1%, I buy insurance. The reason to take climate change seriously is not because we're certain of it. It's because we're uncertain of it. Uncertainty is the reason to act. It's the same reason you bought insurance on your roof and on your basement. And I can promise you one thing. The chances of climate change being irreversible and catastrophic are a lot more than that 1% about Saddam Hussein. So when it comes to climate change prevention, me and Dick, we're like that. Okay? Think like Dick, okay? Next slide, please. Actually, this is Shepherd Glacier, 1913 Glacier National Park. Next slide, please. This is Shepherd Glacier, 2005, if you can find it. Next slide, please. Those red dots, those are the cities in America that recorded their hottest average temperatures ever last summer. Next slide. We'll go on to the fourth megatrend. Fourth megatrend I call 1.6 billion. Fortunately, it's actually down to 1.4 billion, I'm told by the World Bank. Now, 1.6 billion is the number of people in the world who have no on-off switch in their lives. I call them the energy poor. And energy poverty is a huge global problem, okay? Because if you don't have access to an electric grid in a hot, flat, and crowded world, you will not be able to dig a deeper well when the dries get drier. You will not be able to turn on the simplest fan when the hots get hotter. And most importantly, your kids will not be able to get to Google. They will not be able to get on the internet. And if your kids can't get to Google, they will not be able to get access to all the world's knowledge, all the world's libraries, all the world's books, all the world's universities. They will fall behind exponentially, not at a normal rate. Energy poverty is a huge problem today. Next slide, please. This is what energy poverty looks like. Those are students in Guinea, and they're doing their homework. But you may notice they're actually doing their homework in the airport parking lot. And they're doing their homework in the airport parking lot in Guinea because it's the only place they had light. That's the face of energy poverty, and there are 1.4 billion people on the planet today afflicted with it. Next slide, please. This is the last of our megatrends. It's biodiversity loss. It's one that really is not getting the attention, I would argue, that it deserves. Friends, we're also, among all the other trends, in the middle of a hot, flat, and crowded world. We're also in the middle of a huge phase of biodiversity loss. According to Conservation International, we're now losing 20 new species. Sorry, we're now losing 1 new species every 20 minutes. We are in the midst of a phase of biodiversity extinction that is equal to, if not greater, when the asteroid hit the Yucatan Peninsula and wiped out all the dinosaurs. Only this time, we are the asteroid. Now, I call this chapter in my book The Age of Noah. And it's built around 2 giant soft-shell turtles alive in 2 Chinese zoos, and they're the last 2. One's a male, one's a female, one's 80 years old, one's 100 years old, and they've been trying to get them to mate. Not so easy. Those 2 turtles represent to me the age we are in. We are in the age of the biblical Noah. We are the first generation of humans since Noah who will have to actually have a strategy to save the last 2. Because we, and especially your kids, are actually going to meet the last 2 of more and more species. Now, there's a word that I believe needs to be banished from the English language when it comes to biodiversity today. And that word is later. Later, for a kid from Minnesota, that was when you could fish the same lake, paddle the same stream, walk the same beautiful valley in Minnesota, save even the same endangered species. Do it now, or do it later. Well, friends, in a hot, flat, and crowded world, when it comes to biodiversity, later is too late. So please, whatever you're going to save, do it now. Because in a hot, flat, and crowded world, when it comes to biodiversity, later is officially over. Next slide, please. Deforestation in the Amazon. Next slide, please. So let's go back to our list. I've gone through now the 5 megatrends. There's 2 ways to look at that list. One way to look at that list is to say those are our major problems. Those are the 5 major challenges for humanity. We're cooked. Let's party. Okay? I mean, that is one way to look at that list. That's not how I look at that list. So I look at that list the way John Gardner of Common Cause once described a list like that. He said, that list, that's a list of incredible opportunities masquerading as insoluble problems. That's what that list is. You know why? Because what's really cool about that list is that all 5 problems have the same solution. That's right. All 5 mega problems of the hot, flat, and crowded world have the same solution. Abundant, cheap, clean, non-CO2 emitting, reliable electrons. Whichever university, whichever city, whichever state, whichever country can come up with the most abundant, cheap, clean, reliable electrons will actually be able to dramatically relieve energy and natural resource supply and demand, undermine petro-dictatorship, mitigate climate change, really end energy poverty, and dramatically slow biodiversity loss. How cool is that? The world's 5 biggest problems all have the same solution. What does that tell you? What it tells me is the next great global industry is going to be the search for abundant, cheap, clean, reliable electrons. In California, in Sacramento, you are so well placed to compete and lead in this industry. That is the next great global industry. I know that for sure. There's just one thing I don't know. Who is going to compete and lead it? Is it going to be California, Sacramento, Silicon Valley, New York, Bethesda, Russia, India, China? It's still up for grabs. But what I'm trying to convey to you folks is that this list and these challenges, it's not just about electric power. The country, the city, the communities, the universities that win that race, they're actually going to have the most national power, economic power, innovation power, and in a hot, flat, and crowded world, moral power. That's what it's about. And that's why what my journalism's been about in my book has been to try to redefine green. Because I'm a big believer to name something is to own it. If you can name an issue, you can own the issue. And the problem with green in our country all these years is that the people who named it, who really owned the definition, were actually the people who hated it. And they named it liberal, tree-hugging, sissy, girly man, unpatriotic, vaguely French, vaguely French. Governor, you're looking a little French. Well, friends, I'm here to tell you in the face of these challenges and these opportunities, don't buy it for a second. Green is geopolitical, geostrategic, geoeconomic, capitalistic, innovative, patriotic. Green is the new red, white, and blue. Oh, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. That's what it is. So, don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because they're wrong. And that's why we need a green revolution. Now, again, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Mr. Friedman, we're having a green revolution. I read about it in the United Sky Miles magazine. Oh, I love when I hear that. We're having a green, really, us having a green revolution? Really? Have you ever been to a revolution where no one got hurt? That's the green revolution we're having. Yeah, in our green revolution, everybody's a winner. Sure. ExxonMobil's green, I read it in their ad on the op-ed page of the New York Times. Oh yeah, BP's green, they were beyond petroleum. GM got green, they finally put a little yellow cap on the flex fuel Hummer. Thank you very much, friends. That's not a revolution. That's a party. We've been having a green party. And I have to tell you, it is so much fun. Because I get invited to all the parties. But it has no connection, friends, whatsoever with a real revolution. I actually wrote a history of a real revolution. It was the IT revolution. The book was called The World is Flat. And I learned something writing that. I learned that in a real revolution, there's one rule. Change or die. Adapt or die. The IT revolution, that was the real deal. There's a whole group of IT companies, DEC, Data General, you remember their names. They're in that great IT heaven in the sky. Because they did not change and so they died. You will know the green revolution is here and has been won when two things happen. First, companies really have to change or die. Cities really have to change or die. Not change their logo or die. Not give me a green racing stripe on my stationery or die. No, I mean change or die. And the second thing, and this is our real goal, you'll know the green revolution is here and has been won when the word green blessedly disappears. That is our goal. Oh no, there'll be no such thing as a green auditorium. There'll just be an auditorium, and you will not be able to build it or use it unless it's at the highest levels of energy efficiency and sustainability. There'll be no such thing as a green car. There'll just be a car, and you will not be able to make it, sell it, or buy it unless it's at the highest levels of energy efficiency and sustainability. Friends, the green revolution will be here when the word green disappears. Now, this issue of the Green Revolution is something of a bugaboo of mine. I actually devoted a whole chapter in my book about it. People send me stuff all the time, you know, and when I was working on the book, somebody sent me this. It said, a recent study found that the average American golfer walks about 900 miles a year. Another study found American golfers drink, on average, 22 gallons of alcohol a year. That means that, on average, American golfers now get about 41 miles to the gallon. So, makes you sort of proud to be an American, you know. So I was working on the book and was at my doctor's office one day, and there was a magazine cover story that caught my eye. Is it the magazine I don't usually read? It's Working Mother magazine, but the cover story caught my eye. I'm going to have to stand over here because I got to turn the page. And it was the cover story was 205 easy ways to save the Earth. I thought, so easy? I must Google for more. So I went home and I put into Google, easy ways to save